Now let's just move on further towards another representation of the data, which is nothing but called as the graphical representation of the data. And in this particular chapter, we will discuss the three types of the graphical representation of the data, which is nothing but a bar graph, histograms of the uniform width and of the varying widths, and the frequency polygons. So let's just study all of these one by one. So let us suppose if I'm just starting the graphical representation first of all with the bar graphs. So what are the bar graphs? So the bar graph is actually a pictorial representation of the data, in which usually we have some kind of a bars which are of the uniform width and which are drawn with the equal spacing in between on one axis. Say if we are just talking about the x-axis, so they do have the equal spacing in between all of them, depicting the variables and values on the y-axis. So the values are always on the y-axis, and the heights of the bars are actually depending upon the values of the variable. So this is actually all about the bar graph. So let's just form a bar graph for any particular question. So let us suppose if I'm just taking an example, a family with a monthly income of rupees 20,000 had planned the following expenditure per month under the various heads. So you can see we have the various heads as grocery, rent, education of children, medicine, fuel, entertainment, miscellaneous things as well. So the expenditure in 1,000 rupees is depicting as 4, 5, 5, 2, 2, 1, 1. So this is actually nothing but 4,000, 5,000, 2,000 and 1,000. So we are just taking the expenditure as only 4, 5, 5, 2, 2 and 1, 1. So let's just form the bar graph of this particular data. So first of all, as we have the two things over here, which is nothing but the heads and the expenditure. So we'll take the heads on the x-axis and we'll take the expenditure on the y-axis, because the expenditure is in the form of the rupees, so they will definitely give a height to our bars. So hence we'll take the heads on the x-axis and the expenditure on the y-axis. So let's just see all the steps which are all related with how we can form the bar graph. So the step number 1, so the question is draw a bar graph for the data above. So the step number 1 would be like V represents the heads, means the variable on the horizontal axis, like I have talked already. And further, choosing any scale, we can choose any scale over here, since the width of the bar is not important, but we take equal widths for all the bars. So we always used to try to take equal width for all the bars, because that representation would be more easy to interpret. And further, let one head be represented by 1 unit. So we are taking the scale over here as nothing but one head is represented by 1 unit only, and then we'll take the equal spacing in between them, which is also of the 1 unit. So the next step would be like V represents the expenditure on the vertical axis. Let the scale be 1 unit, which is actually representing rupees 1,000. And the step number 3 would be like to represent our first head, that is grocery. We draw a rectangular bar with the width 1 unit and the height is of 4 units. The height is of 4 units. Why so? Because the expenditure which was related with the grocery was nothing but 4,000, and we are taking 1 unit as rupees 1,000. So 4 units would definitely count as 4,000. So hence this is nothing but the step number 3. Further, step number 4 would be like similarly we'll do the same thing with other heads as well, and we'll represent them on a bar graph, leaving a gap of 1 unit in between the 2 consecutive bars. So let's just see how we can do this. So let us suppose this is the way I'm taking the heads on the x-axis, the values or the expenditure on the y-axis. You can see I'm just taking a 1 unit gap over here. I'm just taking a 1 unit gap over here, and I'm just drawing all the bars with the 1 unit over here, and with the width of 1 unit. And further, you can see that these are all the expenditures which are all representing a scale in which we have taken 1 unit as nothing but 1,000, 2 unit is nothing but 2,000. So let's just talk about the grocery. So if I'm just talking about the grocery, so in grocery we have the expenditure as nothing but 4,000 rupees. So let's just form a rectangular bar which is related with the grocery. So this would be nothing but of this form, where the width is nothing but 1 and the height of it is nothing but 4. You can see this, the height of this is nothing but 4. So for the grocery, this is the rectangular bar. Now let's just talk about the rent. Now if we are just talking about the rent, now you can see over here for the rent we have 5,000 rupees, 5,000 expenditure. So this is nothing but a rectangular bar. You can see they are nothing but of the uniform widths. They are nothing but of the uniform widths. And as I'm just moving on further, if I'm just talking about the education, we have the same education means we have the expenditure of rupees 5,000. So as you can see, they are meeting up with this 5 over here, which is nothing but the expenditure. And furthermore, about the medicine, we have 2,000 expenditure. So this is nothing but only this. The fuel was also 2,000, and further the entertainment was 1,000, and the miscellaneous was 1,000. So this is nothing but the way we can represent a bar graph. Now you can see over here that there are equal spacing in between them. We can also create a lot more space in between them. We can also create 1 unit space in between them as well. So I'm just forming up them in such a manner such that all do have the equal spacing in them. Furthermore, you can see over here, if I'm just talking about the expenditure of the education, so this is actually more than double of that of the medicine, and so goes on. So this is nothing but a way more better representation rather than forming or rather than representing the data into the formation of the tabular form or into the formation of a table. So this is nothing but all about the bar graphs, the way we represent them. So let's just see how we can do this. So as you can see over here, we have the heads which are on the x-axis, and further we have the expenditure which is on the y-axis. Now for the grocery, we do know that for the expenditure of the grocery is actually nothing but of 4,000 rupees. So now the 4,000 rupees, we will take the width as also 1 unit, and we'll take the height as nothing but 4 units, because the height being 4 unit is actually representing the 4,000 rupees. Here 1 unit is representing rupees 1,000. So the groceries bar would be nothing but of this form. As you can see over here, the width over here is nothing but 1 unit, and further the height over here is nothing but 4 units. Now let's just talk about the rent. So first of all, if I'm just talking about the rent, then the expenditure of the rent was 5,000 rupees. So it is nothing but the bar which would be formed in such a way, and you can see over here there is an equal spacing in between both of these, and further the equal spacing would exist in between the rent and the education. So the education involves again an expenditure of rupees 5,000. The medicine involves the expenditure of 2,000. Fuel was also involved, the expenditure of 2,000. Entertainment is of 1,000. Miscellaneous is also 1,000. So this is nothing but the representation of the data into the formation of the bar graph. And you can see over here that we do have the equal gaps in between all these, and they are nothing but of the uniform width, but they do have the different heights, because the heights are actually depending upon the expenditure. And hence, if I'm just looking at this particular representation of the data, then definitely you can see over here that if I'm just looking at this data, then I can definitely say that the education's expenditure is more than double than that of the expenditure of the medicine. So we can interpret the data over here more easily than the representation of the data into the tabular form. So this representation, which is the graphical representation of the data, is far more much better than that of the tabular representation. So this is the very first graphical representation of data, which is nothing but called as the bar graphs.